Well, what really gave me the idea, or not the idea, but the phobia of sculpture was when I was younger. I traveled with my father, who was a violinist, in Europe, and they'd lose me in the parks and in the different places where there was sculpture, you see. And I suppose that's what influenced me in my earlier days at school. I was modeling, and even at around home, I'd pick up clay, and when I was 8, 9 years old, that was my idea. So that kept on going till later on. Well, I decided to go in the sculptural business. That is, I went to Europe for my. I was born in France, you see. Mm-hmm. I went to Europe to do my military service, but instead of that, I went to school there. I had some relative that sent me to school. And then I came back to Canada here and worked in the States and kept on going in sculpture, you see. I came back to, when I left France, I came back to Manitoba here, and there was absolutely no work to do in the sculptural field other than in the architectural sculpture, like the Roman Corinthians and the different figures that they put on buildings, you see, the style that they used at that time, which they don't use now, but they kept on having architectural, the old Roman Empire idea, the Hellenic. All relief, Roman capitals, head, if it's Gothic, heads of different fantastic head. You've seen that, we had crests and all the different sculptures that were used at the time, you see. I went to work there on the civic center. They had sculptures in the Opera House in Chicago. I worked on different motifs there, and then I wasn't in the States on any working permit, so I had to keep going. Maybe I shouldn't say this, so but I had to keep going from one place to the other. You see, because I wanted to stay in the States. I didn't want to come back to the Depression here in Manitoba. But in '32, I got into Canada again, and I was fortunate enough in getting a commission to do the Vancouver Hotel. There was quite a large contract there to do work, Mm-hmm. So I worked there for 3 years. Came back here and did another CN Hotel, which was in Saskatoon. In other words, I was following the work where it was, you see. And back from Halifax to Vancouver, I was a traveling sculptor. I'd hear something from we had a union then, the union of sculptors, carvers and sculptors. And they'd give you an idea of where the work was, and then you apply to the architect. And I had no trouble getting work anywhere because I had already a good start, you see, from the...
Were you married at the time you were
traveling? No, I married late. I married in '42. And 43, rather.
So it was a little easier to travel on your own then?
Well, I did a lot of traveling after that. When I settled here, any person, I must explain this, that any person staying in Winnipeg and relying only on sculpture to work would be far and remote from work, because there's something that comes out maybe every 5, 6 years, and then that's it, you see.
Do you think it's better or worse today?
It's worse. Today it's completely disappeared. Today I could say that I could pack it up entirely, because I wouldn't even look at it, because there's absolutely nothing now other than glass, and there's no more ornaments on buildings. I think the architects have ignoring sculpture entirely, and in thinking that it's a minor thing in the building, in the arts. Sculpture doesn't exist anymore. They think this man, Gabouri, I'll repeat it because I said over the air in the French TV that any man graduating from university is automatically a sculptor. So that explains it all. You know, as far as sculpture is concerned, there may be one sculptor and to 500 architects in the country. You know, it's harder, I believe. Not that I want to glorify my profession or anything like that, but it's harder to become an artist in sculpture than it is to become an architect, because when you've passed your degree, you have your sheepskin, and all you have to do is strive for work. Nobody questions it, but you as a sculptor has to stand behind each individual piece that you make, or else you're known for what you do, not what you organize. You see. However, that's a matter of contention, you know. The kind of money we used to get, it was really, if you did a crest, there's so much a crest. You see, you had your crest, like I supplied crest for Canada throughout, for 6 years, all the public buildings. Well, they would go through, the model was made, and they'd go through the foundry, and the foundry would make them and send them. You see, it was going back to manufacturing. It's not the individual work was only done by the sculptor originally, and then it was manufactured after in bronze, you see, in the foundries.
But you weren't paid.
Oh, we were paid. Let me see. Some of the crests I had $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000. All different prices depending on size and originality. You see.
Well, was that a contract figure, or?
No. Well, I'll give you an instance. It's not a crest. It's all the carving on the Museum of Natural History in Regina. My contract was $160,000.
And that includes all the expenses and everything.
That includes, I had to hire the men, hire the people, get the work done and finish.
That's a beautiful piece too.
Well, it's was well received anyway. I have a letter from, or had a letter, and I've been looking for it, from Vincent Massey, the Governor General at the time, saying that if they had he unveiled a building in Regina, and he told me that if they had he granted a Massey Award for sculpture, that I would get it, you see, for all the good it did to it.
During your career, you managed to work with your sculpture through many ethnic groups. One in particular I'm interested in is the Sherazetic Synagogue. You did the tabernacle doors. What amount of research did you have to do to find out the symbols that in Judaism that would be relevant to use on those doors?
Well, the research is already done. You know, when you come to figure that, for instance, for this specific job, the synagogue, Mr. Blankstein was the architect, and he has knowledge of all the symbols of the Jewish faith and everything else. And you go and see the rabbi and discuss it with him. He shows you the different ornaments and things, and you figure out to set them up to do your work, you see. You grow with things as you're doing them, and you do them sometimes unconsciously. At the beginning, you look for things, and after a while, they come naturally to you. You see, just like a singer, I suppose. You know, I know a person learns an area and then they have to keep on working on that area all their lives. Even they may sing it 500, 600 times, they still have to practice on it, you see. The same thing with thought of sculpture. If you're doing a piece of sculpture, you grow with it, you see, and that's it. When you quit growing with it, I guess you quit, that's all. Well, Liam Moll is a sculptor. He's a good sculptor. One of the good sculptors here in Western Canada, I would say. But you see, the people that come from the old country, most of them have had the Second War period. You see, they had to rebuild all the old buildings, traditional buildings of different countries, and then they had to hire people that understood that work, and they created a certain group of people, you know, that work in that line of business. You see, that's the only ones that know that. But in Canada today, I doubt you'd find a Canadian that could do a Corinthian cap, even, which 30 years ago you could have had 500 people that knew how to do that. You see, the Hudson Bay, I was in charge of all the capitals there, and we had workers, or you know, the other people working on them. Naturally, they couldn't do. No one man could do the 38 caps there, and they're huge. You see. The Corinthian caps there that you're speaking about on the Hudson Bay, there are many others in town here. Some are carved and some of them were cast. Like for instance the
Toronto Dominion Bank would have been cast.
Toronto, no, that's all carved.
That's carved?
That's all carved, all the way. The auditorium. They couldn't afford, they had 12 architects on that job. That was during the Depression, you know. And they couldn't afford to put sculpture on it. So we devised a way of doing it in cast stone, and people said, well, that'll all fall to pieces tomorrow. But now you can go and see the caps are there, and they're the only thing that didn't fall to pieces. The rest, the stone is dirty, and that's clean, you see. But that's the first piece of cast stone that was done here, to my knowledge, in sculpture in Manitoba. Dan Stock is a friend of mine. He gave me a call. He said, I'd like to get 4 apostles on the church, and I wanted somewhat modern, you know, see, on the figure, the old figure on a modern idea. Well, I said, how would you like the brick sculpture? It's a brick wall. Have a brick sculpture. I suggested that to him. He said, and he said, draw me the figures, and so I did that, and I brought it to him, and I did this, the whole wall. It's quite impressive for the fact that it's new, you see. It's the oldest form of sculpture known. That's Byzantine sculpture. It's adapted to this, and people call it modern, but 5,000 years ago, that was a style. He sticks a cigar in my mouth, says, come on to work tomorrow. I said, what do you pay? He says, well, we pay, he says, sculptor's wages, $7 an hour. I'm talking about 1929 now. I said, brother, I'm not going any further than this. This is Mecca, I'm staying here. So I worked there in Chicago, and then I went to the first union meeting, and one fellow stood up, and he said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Winnipeg. Then I didn't matter. He said, well, you go back to Winnipeg because you got a job from the boss and you didn't get it from us. And he said, if you want to live, one guy next to me says, sit down, Frenchy. He says, if you want to live, he says, keep quiet. You won't get out further in the back lane. I knew what it was right away, so I said, goodbye. So I worked in Chicago. I went to work in Joliet, because there was a union there, but you didn't need to have the boss to give you a job, you see. And from there I went to Detroit, worked on Porsche Club, and I worked with all the building, the architecture, you see. And then I went to New York and got a job with Lee Laurie. And that was a good job. We did all the courthouse and then the court, you know, where they have the skating rink and everything. And I worked there for another 8 months, and I kept going from one town to the other. The wandering Jew, you know, I'd go one place and I'd go to a monumental place and I'd say, I'll carve you a crucifix. Right away, they had nobody to do that, you know. They'd oh, come on, you can make 10 of them, you know. I'd work there 2-3 days and move to the next place. I had to because I was already one step over the immigration department, you see. In this particular case, I'm glad you picked on that one, because this was an afterthought. The architect had thought that he would put a bronze crucifix on this, and the priest wanted a stone one, because the name of the church is the Holy Cross, and he wanted a stone one. They already had the stone cross, and I added the figure to it. I went over and had something that's not done. Usually you have to carve it from the cross, you see. But in this case, I added the figure right to it. That's a 8-foot figure, life and a half, you know, lifestyle. And I added that, and I put braces, knocked it in, put it in, fitted, and there it is. I hope it's still there. I'm sure it is, because like the Museum of Natural History. Well, I worked on that 2 years, but when you say you work 2 years, you know, you work 4 years, because you work 2 years to get the job. You have to go and persuade architects that you're going to do this and you're going to make it, and if they know you, then they trust you, then you go and bring in your work and work in conjunction with them, which is used to be the usual way with sculptors. They'd work in conjunction with the architect, you see. Well, my best known was the Museum of Natural History, because it has the longest frieze in the world was ever carved, yeah? The longest frieze was ever carved in the world. I didn't know that till I found out I beat the Parthenon by 3 meters. What I consider my best work is I can't say because the Belgian War Memorial isn't a bad rendition of my work. It's more on the crude style of sculpture, you know what I mean? It's not this aesthetic business, but it's more in the basic idea that I have. Right? I'm a war hater. I don't believe in wars. I guess I would have been a hippie. Well, I was a hippie and I didn't know it when I was younger, you see, traveling from one way to the other. And I hated war. I had seen enough from the first war. I was too young to go in the first war, but I wasn't too old to go in the last one, though. But I passed my medical and they wouldn't let me in. But I would have been a poor soldier. I'm not patriotic in that sense. The whole thing is, you know, is that I don't see the value of just pushing a button and knocking each other out for who? Now, I'm not a communist agitator or anything like that. At least I don't agitate, but I was called a communist when they knocked that statue down, that I was against war, you see. And, I was a socialist then, and I you know, when you're 20, you're socialist. When you're 40, you have your head examined if you're a socialist. At 73, when I did, the ability is senile ability, that's what it be. I've had these people come to see me and ask me how to carve stone, how to do this, how to do that. Well, I said the only way to carve stone is get a stone, get a tool, and find out how to handle it. That's about the only thing you can do. If you know how to pitch, you know how to lift, you know how to take your stone, cut here and leave so much, because that's all you're doing. You're taking off what you don't want and leaving what you want, you see. But they don't know that. They graduated university. They have, some of them still owe their tuition, as a matter of fact. But I don't know how they live. They buy stone, hang around the place, and they're supposed to get grants, supposed to get something, they get nothing. But they don't know how to do the work. They've spent 6 years or 5 years in the fine arts, and they don't know what the material, they don't know the basic part of sculpture, the material you want to express yourself with, you see. If you don't know that, you may have all the dreams on earth, but if you can't put them through, every girl wants to be a movie star. How many of them become movie stars? The same thing with sculpture. You go and take a course of what? Of aesthetics? There's little aesthetics that enter into the arts. It's hard work and plugging, about 90% perspiration and 2% inspiration.